Since the quarterback is always under the most pressure, I think Missouri should take some off of Beau Pribula.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, Kellen Moore being, at this point, seeming like it's inevitable he's going to be the next coach of the New Orleans Saints. Well, that has a lot of Missouri fans wondering, will he bring his little brother Kirby with him to be his offensive coordinator? I want to talk about that whole situation here in just a little bit. Also, Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to start off this show by talking a little bit more about Beau Pribula and also hop on the back of my previous discussion. By the way, apologies for missing the Wednesday episode. I'll make it up to you on today, Friday, and Saturday to get in my 5-a-week allotment. But I had some listeners when I was saying, maybe Missouri should be a little bit more run heavy this season with Beau Pribula as Missouri's starting quarterback. And I had some fans out there saying, that's boring. I don't want to be like Iowa, that type of deal. And one of my first responses to that is, really? As long as we're running the ball effectively, I find that quite exciting, to be honest with you. When Missouri's ripping off 7-8 yards a carry, there's nothing boring about that whatsoever. And in terms of the Iowa-style football, slow down. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. And I'll actually read a comment here from listener Don that I think was pretty well illustrative of this sentiment out there in the audience. He says, I think that with the potential murderer's row of receivers we have, the potentially amazing running game that we have, Missouri needs to be basically 50-50. Being too run-heavy becomes predictable, and Missouri will become a school known to only run the ball and waste our potential blue-chip receivers that would have otherwise come to Missouri, but instead will choose a more pass-friendly system. We need to utilize that receiver room as much as possible. So I definitely agree with some of that. And let me just clarify for those of you who think that I want Missouri to go back to the 1960s or something like that. All I'm really saying is that Missouri has a talented, I believe, quarterback coming in next year, but obviously an inexperienced one as well. So really, even if Sam Horn wins the job, for example, I think this point remains with Sam as well. To me, a good running game, what could take more pressure off of a quarterback, any quarterback, than that? And plus, with Pribula, I just think with his legs and his size, his overall athletic profile, I just think there's a real opportunity there for Missouri to use the designed quarterback running game even more frequently than it did with Brady Cook. And we definitely know Kirby Moore, who I assume at this point is going to be Missouri's offensive coordinator. Again, I'll get to that discussion here in just a little bit. But Kirby Moore is not afraid to design or call a quarterback-designed run play. And especially in the red zone, I think that's one of the best places, well, at least one of the most effective places to run the quarterback. Now, the injury risk, how much that's worth it, well, that's an ongoing debate, that's for sure. Maybe you're on the Tom Brady side of it where you go, hey, what do we do with these quarterbacks? Or maybe you're more on the Kirby Moore side where you're going, yeah, let's jam them into the line of scrimmage so I can get into the end zone. Again, what I'm really saying about Pribula and the Missouri offense, whether it's Pribula or Horn next season taking the snaps as your starter, what I'm saying is really asking him, especially in shotgun formation, to drop back 40 times a game. Especially early in the season against South Carolina, for example, or even against Kansas in week 2, I just don't know that that's a realistic recipe for success for any unseasoned quarterback. So what I'm saying is it's not really about the amount of passes that I would like Pribula to attempt. I just would like to see, especially on first and 10, second and 5, that type of stuff. Let's see Pribula under center a decent bit. Let's see him in the pistol quite a bit. Formations that threaten the run, and especially threaten the run in both directions, whereas, let's be honest, a shotgun formation where you have a running back to one side, although Missouri does run a lot of jet sweep action, which can get the play running the other way, the defense flowing the opposite direction. For the most part, the shotgun running attack is mostly outside zone, inside zone in one direction. The pistol game under center can be a lot more unpredictable just in terms of the array of types of runs that you can have. And not only that, when you have a guy who can move around like Beau Pribula, well, you can get that play action game going too. Get him rolling outside of the pocket, getting him dumping it off in the flat to the tight end for easier throws, that type of deal. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying Missouri, again, needs to bring back the triple option or anything like that. I'm not saying we need to become a service academy or go back, to 1995 NFL offense, which is what I like to call what the Iowa Hawkeyes like to do. All I'm saying is I think Missouri would be wise to not put all of the pressure, to put all of the decisions and everything on top of Pribula as if he's a third or fourth year veteran, that type of deal. I think Eli Drinkwitz and company is smart enough to realize that, but I think it's an interesting talking point for all of you. And now I'm about to get into some speculation here that, well, quite honestly, I could really end up regretting this. I could have some egg on my face here, but you know what? As I record here at about just before 11 a.m. here on Thursday, January 30th, this is how I'm feeling about the Kellen Moore situation. And actually, I should say the Kirby Moore situation. It's his older brother, Kellen Moore, looking like right now all the reports are he's going to be the next coach of the New Orleans Saints. Nothing official yet, but even the betting markets right now are indicating that Kellen Moore, a heavy favorite to be the next coach of the New Orleans Saints. So the obvious question here, at least from some Missouri fans, hey, is it possible that he takes his little brother Kirby, Missouri's offensive coordinator, with him? Well, you know what? Again, as of right now, I don't think that's going to happen, and here's why. Quite simply, Kirby Moore is set to make $1.3 million as Missouri's offensive coordinator next season. That's a real chunk of change, even compared to NFL money. You look at, the top offensive coordinators in the NFL, Todd Monken of Baltimore and Mike Kafka of the New York Giants, make about $3 million. By the way, Kellen Moore made $2.5 million this past season as the Eagles' offensive coordinator. But when you go further down the list, the guys who are tied for ninth out of 32 teams in the NFL, make about $1.5 million a season. So guys even in the top 10 are making about SEC offensive coordinator money. The point here is in this league, actually, and at the upper echelons of college football, we just saw Chip Kelly get $2 million for being Ohio State's offensive coordinator. Money well spent there, I would say. But the point here is that at the upper echelons of college football, especially in the Big Ten and the SEC, the money is very competitive for those coordinator positions. So even though Kirby, I'm sure, loves his brother and all that good stuff, you got to think that he'd want a raise if he's gonna move jobs, or at the very, very least make the same. I don't think there's any way he's taking a pay cut even to go work for his brother. So here's the deal. What is the Saints' particular situation? Well, I think actually their ownership situation explains mostly why I don't think it's going to happen. So you know what? Let's pay that off on the other side of the break, actually. But you know what? Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. There is no question about that. And whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. And I got to say, my usual Super Bowl bet here applies. If you think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win, we got to bet minus 130. In other words, bet $130 to win 100. Well, I would say take plus 110, bet 100 to win 110 on Patrick Mahomes to be the Super Bowl MVP. I just simply don't see a scenario, at least a likely scenario, where the Chiefs win the game and Mahomes is not the MVP. And that's why you have to stick with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. Over the years, particularly in the NBA and Major League Baseball, you've seen a lot of new money, I guess you could say, hedge fund guys, private equity, who knows, all tech guys, Silicon Valley, all kinds of stuff. Guys who have a bajillion dollars who, frankly, an NBA team, a baseball team, it's almost like a plaything. Well, in the NFL, that's less the case. You have a lot more of old money, family money, teams like, ownership like the Hunts of the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, that team has been passed down for generations, and a lot of times that's the main business. It's a huge primary business of a lot of these families and owners. Well, that's the truth for the New Orleans Saints as well. And of course, the reason I'm bringing this up, again, the Kirby Moore possibility. Is he going to follow his brother to New Orleans? Well, years ago, Tom Benson, I believe in 2018, passed away, and now the owner of the team is his widow, Gail Benson. So here's the deal with Gail Benson. From all I've seen with the Bensons over the years, and of course her ownership over the last few years, don't get me wrong, the Saints had some success after Tom Benson died, but once Drew Brees retired, once Sean Payton left, retired briefly, well, it just hasn't been great for the Saints. And quite frankly, I just don't see that franchise, that ownership, breaking the bank for an offensive coordinator. I just really don't see that. I don't see them paying him, Kirby Moore, for instance, $2 billion a season. It's not as though he is an absolute sure thing as he's the next whiz kid NFL offensive coordinator. In fact, Kirby's coming from college off a season where Missouri had a really good season. Maybe not up quite to the standards of 2023, though. That would certainly be fair. You could say the same thing about the Missouri offense. So you take all of these factors, you put them all together. If I'm Kirby Moore, why in the world am I going to walk away from $1.3 million next season unless I can get at least that, if not likely more? And frankly, I just don't see that happening from Gail Benson and the New Orleans Saints. Again, I could look really stupid if in about 6 hours or so, New Orleans, it's reported that, hey, not only are they getting Kellen, they're getting Kirby as well, but this is just how I'm looking for it right now. No inside information here. Just trying to make 2 and 2 equal 4. And back to Beau Pribula here for just a moment. Dan Keegan over at Rock M Nation had an interesting angle that I had not really thought of before, so I thought I'd share it with you here. Keegan says, one wrinkle for optimism, Pribula comes from a tight end factory. Speaking about Penn State, of course, and has generally spent the last 3 years working in an offense that values the position. Maybe he will be more reliant and develop a quick chemistry with his big fellas, adding a new dimension to the passing attack. Well, that would certainly be a welcome change here under the Eli Drinkwitz offense, who often uses his tight ends like a sixth offensive lineman, without a doubt. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, of course. Of course, blocking in the run game, fantastic. But I would like to see Missouri use its tight ends more, in particular, of course, Brett Norfleet, who, to be fair to Missouri, he did suffer an early shoulder injury last season that seemed to hamper him mostly, certainly on and off at the very least, if not for the entire season. So that may have been one of many reasons why the intermediate and tight end passing game didn't quite get going. But yeah, Pribula, having worked with a tight ends a lot, maybe there will be more of a focus there. And again, I do think if with that, the threat of a running game on the backside of like those read option type plays, for example, out of the shotgun, well, hey, there's another wrinkle out of the shotgun running game. That does pair well when you can actually fake that and then, make an outside linebacker or defender, flat defender, make a choice between you, the quarterback runner, and the tight end, that type of deal. Who knows? There could be, again, I just think Pribula and his ability with his legs opens up a lot of possibilities for hopefully Kirby Moore and the rest of this Missouri offense. One thing I've speculated on a decent bit is that I think in the fairly near future, I think the redshirt rule is going to go away. I think athletes are going to get 5 years, essentially. Instead of, 5 years to play 4, I basically just think everybody's going to get 5 years, essentially. Though, according to Jeff Goodman, although, let's be honest, his reporting can be a little bit suspect, can't it? But no, according to Jeff Goodman, he says there is no proposal for 5-year eligibility that currently exists. An NCAA spokesperson told the Field of 68, and nothing is set to be voted on at any time in the near future. So, again, I'd speculated that maybe even as soon as this coming football season, I thought that could happen. Obviously, Goodman's reporting there, throwing some cold water on that. I still just think, frankly, I don't know when it's going to happen. It just seems like it's too logical that at a certain point, it's going to happen. Everything has been slowly but surely moving that way over the years. Heck, it wasn't that long ago. If you set foot on the field, your red shirt was burnt. Well, now you can play up to 4 games plus a bowl. I mean, honestly, what is the difference, especially in a post-COVID world where everybody's 2020 didn't count and Diego Pavia setting new precedents with his legal action and all this stuff. You know, regardless of what Jeff Goodman says, I think it's going to happen at some point. Again, that's just my instincts. And speaking of the future, one guy who got a significant upgrade in 24/7 Sports football recruiting rankings for the Tigers is Shaun Terry. And I really think that this explosive young player could be a part of Missouri as soon as 2025 on the special teams unit. So let's talk about that and all of, these changes in Missouri's recruiting rankings here right after these quick words. Almost everyone who touches the ball next season, except for Connor Tollison, is going to look very different for Missouri. Of course, the quarterbacks, the running backs, and even the receiver room is going to look quite a bit different with Luther Burden gone, Theo Weiss gone, and with Marquise Johnson and Josh Manning looking to have bigger roles. Those were the 2 primary kickoff return guys for the last part of the season for Missouri. I think with both of them having bigger roles at receiver, and with Luther Burden, of course, gone as well, he was your primary punt returner. I think there's a really good chance that Shaun Terry, a true freshman on next season's roster, could very well be a part of that return unit, whether as a kickoff returner, punt returner, maybe more likely, or it could easily be both. Too. I think Terry, his high school highlights from Ironton, Ohio, are frankly comical at times, and I mean that in the best way possible. I mean, he's just weaving, crisscrossing throughout the people, causing defenders to run into each other and figuratively breaking their ankles and all that good stuff. I mean, really, Terry is an explosive player. Now, obviously, he's not going to be able to crisscross the field in the SEC like he could in high school. But those explosive traits that he showed, I don't know that he's going to be a polished wide receiver in year one. In fact, I'd bet good money that he's not. But as a punt returner, which he's done in high school, at the very least, I think he could be a real weapon there in year one. Certainly Missouri has shown they're willing to throw a true freshman out there on the kick return unit, the kickoff coverage unit, all that good stuff. Usually not as a returner, though. That's the one thing. If you can trust Terry, especially, again, as a punt returner, kickoff returner, much less of a factor. Punt returner, though, it's actually a huge factor. We've seen it time and time again in football. Muffed punts can cost you a game, without a doubt. So as long as Terry, if you trust him to catch the ball, I certainly, and trust his decision-making back there just as importantly, I definitely trust his explosive playability. So if Missouri's looking for a new Luther Burden, just in terms of a guy who could break a big one in the punt game, I think you're looking at him in Shaun Terry. Now, speaking of that 2025 recruiting class, of which Shaun Terry is definitely a part of, well, there's a couple thoughts here looking at the rankings over at 24/7 Sports. Missouri currently 21st in the overall team rankings. But really, I feel even better about the class than that. By my counts, well, there's actually about half the teams ahead of Missouri. A lot of that is based on just sheer numbers and not the average rankings of the player. For instance, Missouri with just 17 commits compared to Georgia Tech and South Carolina ranked right ahead of the Tigers with 26 commitments from high school. So what does that tell you? That tells you that Missouri's average commitment is quite high, at least according to the quality of the player is quite high. And it also tells you that Missouri strategically expects to be a big player in the transfer portal, well, really for the foreseeable future, I would say. So that's good news because Missouri has been quite effective not only in getting good talent on paper and acquiring more talent than they've seen leave in the portal the last, I would say, at least 2, if not 3 cycles. Well, if that continues, not only is it good in terms of numbers, but Missouri's actually putting these guys in great positions to succeed, too. It seems like the coaches, especially on the defensive line, have done very well. Linebacker, too, have done very well in turning these guys into real players. Brandon Jones on the offensive line, same deal. So, to me, I think this is all a positive sign moving forward. There's no reason, for example, if you're like, oh, well, why do we only have 17 commitments? This is all part of, I think, roster management and strategy here. Missouri knows, at least it anticipates very strongly, that it's going to be a big player in the portal moving forward. And thanks for joining me today here on Locked On Mizzou. On tomorrow's program, going to give you a big fat preview of Missouri's trip to Mississippi State on Saturday in basketball. Boy, a win down at the Hump would feel like a miracle at this point. The Bulldogs lost a tough one to Alabama last night. So does that favor Missouri, or are the Bulldogs going to be looking for a big-time comeback? I don't know. We'll just have to see. I'm going to do a big bunch of homework for you, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow again, right here on Locked On Mizzou.